The Galactic Dominion had conquered 100 worlds, crushed 1,000 civilizations, and erased entire species from history. They had never lost a war. For centuries, they had expanded, believing themselves to be the rightful rulers of the galaxy. And now, their eyes turned to Earth. From their perspective, humanity was weak, a young species with no major influence, no terrifying warlords, and no legendary fleets. Humans were nothing more than another conquest waiting to happen. So, when the Supreme Commander of the Dominion, High Lord Vorthak, appeared on every human screen, he expected fear, panic, and immediate surrender. Instead, he was met with something he had never seen before: laughter. The transmission was meant to be dramatic. Vorthak stood in his grand war chamber, surrounded by towering generals, each one wearing armor forged from the remains of their fallen enemies. Behind him, holograms of their massive war fleets flickered, displaying the sheer power of the Dominion. His deep, guttural voice echoed across every human device as he delivered his message. People of Earth, your existence offends the order of the galaxy. You are weak, primitive, and insignificant. The Dominion has deemed you unworthy of independence. Surrender immediately, and we may allow some of you to survive as servants. Resist, and we shall burn your world to ashes. He ended his speech with the traditional Dominion war cry, a thunderous roar that had sent countless species into despair. But the humans laughed. It started as a low chuckle on a few video feeds, but soon it spread like wildfire. The people of Earth weren't screaming in terror. They weren't pleading for mercy. They were making jokes. Social media erupted with memes mocking the Dominion's threats. Talk show hosts burst into laughter, comparing Vorthak to an overdramatic villain from an old sci-fi movie. Even world leaders, in their official statements, could barely hold back their amusement. One broadcast showed a famous scientist wheezing with laughter, wiping tears from his eyes as he replayed the Dominion's threats. Did he just say we're insignificant? He managed between gasps. Oh, that's rich. Someone show him our history books. Vorthak, watching from the Dominion's command center, felt his temper rise. This was impossible. No species had ever reacted this way. Normally, when the Dominion declared war, there was fear. There was surrender. There were desperate attempts to negotiate. But these humans acted as if this was all some sort of joke. His generals were equally confused, exchanging nervous glances as they watched footage of Earth's response. Supreme Commander, one of them whispered. Determined to force humanity into submission, Vorthak ordered an immediate attack. A Dominion war fleet, composed of heavily armed destroyers and battleships, was dispatched to Earth's outermost colonies. These were small settlements, barely defended and perfect for making an example. The fleet arrived within hours, moving swiftly through space, weapons primed and ready. The Dominion soldiers expected an easy victory. They prepared for the usual cries of terror, the desperate distress calls, and the quick surrender. But once again, humanity surprised them. The moment the Dominion ships appeared, human pilots welcomed them, not with panic, but with sarcasm. Oh no, scary alien ships. One pilot mocked over an open channel. Guys, what do we do? They've come to take our lunch money. Another voice chimed in. I think we should just surrender, right? I mean, they're clearly so powerful. The Dominion commanders, growing angrier by the second, ordered their ships to open fire. Plasma cannons roared to life, sending massive energy blasts toward the human settlements. And then, nothing happened. The energy beams struck the planetary shields and fizzled out like dying embers. The human defenses, which the Dominion had assumed were weak, barely registered the attack. The fleet fired again and again, but their weapons seemed laughably ineffective. Then, Earth's counterattack began. From seemingly nowhere, human warships emerged, their designs sleek and deadly. Missiles, railguns, and electromagnetic cannons tore through the Dominion fleet with terrifying precision. Ships that had survived 100 battles against lesser species were obliterated in seconds. The Dominion soldiers, once so confident in their superiority, watched in horror as their forces were systematically dismantled. The Dominion's distress signals went unanswered. Their enemies had never fought like this. Human pilots taunted them mid-battle, joking about their bad aim, their weak armor, and their outdated tactics. The Supreme Commander, receiving reports of the battle, felt something creeping into his heart, something he had never known before. Fear. The humans had acted as if the Dominion's declaration of war was a joke, and now he understood why. They weren't just stronger, they were playing with them. And then, as if to confirm his worst fears, a new transmission appeared on every screen in the Dominion's war room. A single human, sitting in a chair, laughing so hard he fell to the floor. The text beneath the video read, "Try again. Maybe you'll get it right next time." For the first time in Dominion history, an invasion force had been completely humiliated. The laughter of humanity echoed across the stars, and the once mighty conquerors of the galaxy realized a terrifying truth: they had just declared war on the wrong species. The Dominion's defeat at the human colonies was not just an embarrassment, it was an outrage. Never in the history of their empire had a species reacted this way. Every other race they had conquered had either surrendered immediately or been crushed under the weight of their superior technology. But the humans? They laughed. They mocked. They treated war like a joke. Supreme Commander Vorthak refused to accept this humiliation. He gathered his high-ranking generals in the war chamber, their faces twisted in disbelief and anger as they watched the battle footage over and over again. The humans hadn't just fought back, they had played with the Dominion's forces like hunters toying with prey. Their ships moved faster than any known vessel, their weapons tore through Dominion armor as if it were paper, and their pilots spoke to each other with an ease that suggested they weren't even taking the battle seriously. Even worse, their counterattack had been perfectly timed, as if they had known exactly when and where to strike. It was impossible. The Dominion had been fighting wars for centuries, yet here was a young species that had just begun expanding into space, and they had crushed a Dominion fleet without effort. It made no sense. Vorthak's patience was running thin. The Dominion's reputation was at stake, and he would not allow a species of arrogant, laughing creatures to damage it. He ordered an immediate retaliation this time, not a mere demonstration of power, but a full-scale attack. A fleet of 30 warships, each armed with the most advanced weaponry the Dominion possessed, was dispatched toward a human military outpost located near the Sol system. There would be no mistakes this time. Their orders were simple: eradicate every human defense, destroy every ship, and show no mercy. The fleet traveled at maximum speed, their weapons charged and ready. The soldiers aboard the warships prepared for battle, expecting a real fight this time. They had studied the footage of the last engagement, analyzing every human tactic, every movement, every weakness. They would not be caught off guard again. When the Dominion fleet arrived, they found the human outpost exactly where their intelligence had predicted. The base orbited a barren moon, its defenses appearing weak at first glance. A few warships patrolled nearby, but they were smaller in size, nothing compared to the Dominion's heavily armored battle cruisers. Vorthak's commanders grinned. This would be a slaughter. Without hesitation, the order was given. The Dominion ships fired in perfect unison, unleashing a storm of plasma blasts and high-energy beams toward the human outpost. Explosions erupted across the moon's surface as the first wave of attacks struck their target. The Dominion forces cheered, convinced they had finally broken through. But then something strange happened. The explosions, while visually impressive, caused no actual damage to the human structures. The outpost remained intact. No alarms sounded, no distress signals were sent. It was as if the attack had done nothing at all. The Dominion officers blinked in confusion. Had their sensors malfunctioned? Had they miscalculated their targeting systems? Before they could react, a voice crackled over their communication channels, a human voice, filled with amusement. "Is that all you've got?" The voice said, barely containing laughter. "We were hoping for something a little more impressive." The Dominion commanders froze. This wasn't possible. Their weapons were the most powerful in the galaxy. They had reduced entire civilizations to rubble. And yet, here were the humans, mocking them again. Then, before the Dominion fleet could make sense of the situation, the real nightmare began. The human ships that had seemed small and unimpressive. The first Dominion ship exploded before anyone even realized what had happened. One moment, it was there, fully operational, and the next, it was nothing but debris floating in space. A railgun round, fired from an unseen location, had pierced straight through its core reactor. The second and third ships met the same fate within seconds. There were no flashy energy beams, no prolonged firefights, just quick, efficient destruction. Dominion officers shouted orders in desperation, but it was useless. The human ships were untouchable. They dodged every incoming attack with unnatural ease, striking back with horrifying accuracy. Dominion battlecruisers, designed to withstand prolonged sieges, were ripped apart like cheap metal. Then came the hacking. Dominion screens flickered as human A's infiltrated their systems mid-battle. Critical targeting systems failed. Shields deactivated without warning. Even basic communication channels were overridden. And worst of all, every single screen on every single ship now displayed a looping video, a group of human soldiers laughing hysterically. Vorthok, watching from the Dominion's homeworld, felt his stomach twist in horror. It was happening again. The humans weren't just winning. They were enjoying this. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. The once mighty Dominion fleet was reduced to wreckage, floating aimlessly through space. Only a single battlecruiser remained intact, left untouched on purpose. A message was sent directly to its command deck. It contained no threats, no demands. Just a single sentence. Send more ships next time. We're getting bored. The Dominion officers aboard the last surviving ship stared at the words in silence. Humanity wasn't afraid of them. Humanity wasn't struggling to survive. If anything, they were playing with the Dominion. It was no longer a question of whether humans were strong, it was a question of how strong they really were. The defeated battlecruiser limped back to Dominion space, carrying the terrifying news. And for the first time in history, the mighty conquerors of the galaxy realized they might have made the greatest mistake of their existence. The Dominion was in chaos. The destruction of their fleets at the hands of humanity had sent shockwaves through their empire. Generals who once commanded with absolute authority now spoke in whispers, their voices laced with uncertainty. The Supreme War Council, made up of the most feared warlords in Dominion history, sat in stunned silence, watching the battle footage over and over again, unable to comprehend what had happened. Their fleets, which had crushed civilizations without effort, had been reduced to burning debris in mere minutes. Their ships, which had been the pride of their military, had been torn apart with terrifying efficiency. And the humans had laughed. They had treated the war not as a desperate struggle for survival, but as entertainment. This was not how wars were supposed to go. The Dominion had always been the predator, and their enemies had always been prey. But now, for the first time, they felt something new. They were being hunted. Supreme Commander Vorthok clenched his fists, his claws digging into the metal table in front of him. He refused to accept this humiliation. Humanity had to be crushed, no matter the cost. The Council agreed. A new fleet was assembled, the largest in Dominion history, an armada so vast that its arrival in any system would blot out the stars. This would not be a mere battle. This would be an annihilation. Every warship, every dreadnought, every fighter that the Dominion could spare was gathered into a single unstoppable force. There would be no mercy, no hesitation. Humanity would be erased from existence. The fleet launched, its destination set for Earth, and every Dominion soldier aboard was prepared for absolute victory. The very idea of defeat no longer existed in their minds. But unknown to them, humanity was already waiting. The Dominion fleet entered the Sol system with overwhelming force, their warships spreading across space like a metal storm. Every ship was at full battle readiness, every weapon charged, every soldier prepared for combat. Their sensors scanned the system, searching for the human fleet. But what they saw made their blood run cold. The humans were not retreating. They were not hiding. They were coming straight for them, T first. The Dominion officers were confused. The human fleet was tiny in comparison, their numbers barely a fraction of the Dominion's armada. But then the humans began their attack. And that's when the nightmare truly began. The first wave of human warships moved at speeds the Dominion had never seen before, their movements so precise that not a single shot from the Dominion fleet managed to land. Human ships weaved between enemy formations, slipping past heavy battlecruisers like shadows. Then they struck. The Dominion's strongest warships, designed to endure planetary bombardments, were torn apart in seconds. Explosions rippled through the fleet as human weapons, kinetic railguns, high-speed missiles, and directed energy beams ripped through Dominion armor like paper. Ships that had once stood undefeated in battle found themselves powerless against an enemy that fought like monsters. Dominion officers screamed orders, demanding their forces hold the line, but it was useless. The human fleet was not just winning, they were dismantling the Dominion piece by piece. Their AI-controlled drones moved faster than anything the Dominion had ever encountered, their weapons locking onto targets with horrifying precision. Entire squadrons of Dominion fighters vanished in the blink of an eye, their remains scattered like dust. Then came the hacking. Every Dominion warship, from the smallest frigate to the largest dreadnought. Control panels flickered, targeting systems went offline, and security networks collapsed. Humanity wasn't just outgunning them, they were shutting them down from the inside. And then the laughter returned. Every Dominion battleship, every command deck, every officer's screen was suddenly overridden. Across every ship in the fleet, human broadcasts began playing. Soldiers, generals, even Vorthok himself were forced to watch as human pilots grinned into their cameras, laughing, taunting, mocking. Some Dominion officers panicked, slamming buttons, trying to shut down the feed. They failed. The entire fleet was now part of humanity's game. Then came the worst part. A single message appeared across every screen in the Dominion fleet, a short, chilling sentence that made every soldier's heart stop. "We're not even trying yet." The panic that followed was absolute. The Dominion fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, broke. Ships turned, trying to escape, abandoning their battle formations in pure desperation. Some attempted to fire blindly, hoping to hit something, anything but the humans danced between their attacks like ghosts. One by one, Dominion warships were destroyed, not in a battle, but in a massacre. Humanity didn't just win. They didn't just defeat their enemy. They shattered them. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the battle was over. The Dominion fleet had been eradicated. Not a single warship remained in fighting condition. The survivors drifted in space, their systems failing, their crews silent. The humans could have destroyed them all. They could have wiped out the remaining Dominion forces without a second thought. But they didn't. Instead, they allowed one ship to survive. A single Dominion battleship was left intact, its communication systems restored just long enough for one final message to be sent back to the Dominion homeworld. It was a video. The footage showed a group of human officers gathered around a table, their faces barely holding back amusement. One of them, a woman in a military uniform, smiled at the camera before leaning forward. "That was fun," she said, grinning. "Let us know if you want to try again." Then she winked, and the transmission ended. The message reached the Dominion High Command, and the entire Empire fell into silence. The war that was meant to be an easy victory had turned into a nightmare. The Dominion, the most powerful force in the galaxy, had thrown everything they had at humanity, and humanity had barely even tried. Fear spread through the ranks of the Dominion's military, a fear deeper than any they had ever known. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they realized the truth. Humanity was not their next victory. Humanity was their final mistake. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for centuries, its iron grip stretching across thousands of systems. Planets trembled at the mere mention of its war fleets, and no species had ever dared to challenge its authority. But everything had changed. The unstoppable force they had built, the war machine that had crushed countless civilizations, had been torn apart not by an empire older or stronger, but by a young, reckless species that had turned war into entertainment. Humanity had not just defeated them. They had humiliated them. The images of burning Dominion warships, of soldiers surrendering without a fight, of commanders begging for mercy, had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. And worst of all, the humans had laughed. The mighty conquerors of the galaxy had become the punchline of a joke. The Dominion was no longer feared. It was mocked. The effects were immediate. Dozens of Dominion-controlled worlds, once held in submission by fear alone, rebelled overnight. The Empire's governors, who had once ruled with cruelty and arrogance, now found themselves hunted. Civil unrest turned into full-blown uprisings. Armories were raided, Dominion soldiers were slaughtered in the streets, and former slaves took up arms against their former masters. Dominion warships, those that had survived humanity's onslaught, were either stolen or abandoned. The once mighty fleet had been reduced to wreckage and retreat. And yet, in the heart of the Dominion's homeworld, Supreme Commander Vorthak still refused to believe what was happening. He sat in the war chamber, surrounded by his most trusted generals, his claws digging into the metal table. His yellow eyes burned with fury as he watched the latest reports. Entire sectors had fallen. Some of his own warlords had fled, refusing to fight a war they knew they could not win. Even those who had remained loyal were hesitant. The sight of humanity's warships, sleek and untouchable, haunted their minds. They had been conditioned to believe that they were invincible. But the humans had shattered that illusion. The chamber was silent, filled with the suffocating weight of impending doom. Vorthak's gaze fell on the central screen, displaying the latest horror, a human fleet approaching their homeworld. This was no invasion force. The humans were not here for conquest. They had made it painfully clear that they had no interest in ruling the Dominion. They weren't here to take the throne. They were here to watch it burn. The Dominion's last fleet had been assembled in desperation, every remaining warship positioned in orbit around the capital planet. They had no choice but to stand their ground. There was nowhere left to run. Vorthak forced himself to believe that they still had a chance. Maybe, just maybe, humanity had underestimated them. Maybe this time, the Dominion could strike first. Maybe the attack began before he could finish his thoughts. The human fleet didn't open with a declaration. They didn't send demands. They simply attacked. Railgun rounds tore through Dominion ships with horrifying precision, each impact sending massive cruisers spiraling into flames. The Dominion fleet barely had time to react. Their defensive lines collapsed instantly. Every ship that tried to retreat found itself hunted down and destroyed. Every officer who tried to issue commands found their systems hacked and overridden. Within minutes, the once proud defenders of the Dominion's homeworld were nothing but wreckage. Then, humanity did something no one expected. They did not bombard the planet. They did not land ground troops. They did not demand surrender. Instead, they let the people watch. Humanity hacked into every broadcast system across the planet, forcing the Dominion citizens to see what was happening. They saw their warships being torn apart in the void above them. They saw their empire's last hope vanish in flames. They saw the truth: the Dominion was over. And then, the final message arrived. A single transmission, broadcasted across the entire Dominion capital. A human voice, calm, amused, dangerous. This is not a war. This is an execution. And we've only just begun. Panic erupted across the planet. The Dominion's leaders, once untouchable gods among their people, became prey. The same civilians they had ruled over, the same citizens they had oppressed for generations, now turned against them. Riots consumed the capital, tearing through government buildings, burning down military compounds. The once loyal soldiers of the Dominion, broken by fear, either fled or joined the chaos. Vorthak watched it all unfold in horror. His empire, the greatest force the galaxy had ever known, was dying before his eyes. And the humans. They hadn't even set foot on the planet. He staggered back from the screen, his mind unable to process what was happening. This was impossible. The Dominion had ruled for centuries. They had conquered, enslaved, destroyed entire civilizations. How? How had this happened? A voice echoed through the chamber's speakers. A human voice. A live transmission. They had hacked into his own war chamber. Vorthak's blood ran cold. Supreme Commander Vorthak, the voice said, dripping with amusement. Are you still there? Or have you run away like the others? Vorthak's claws trembled. His generals stood frozen, too afraid to speak. You started this war, the voice continued. But you were never in control, were you? You thought you were the predator. But we were always the hunters. The screen flickered. For a moment, Vorthak thought it was a glitch. But then, he saw the images. Every Dominion-controlled planet, every colony, every world under their rule, all of them were burning. Humanity had not just defeated them in battle. They had dismantled the entire Dominion. The rebellion had spread across the galaxy like wildfire, and now there was nothing left to save. Vorthak collapsed into his chair, his body shaking. He had lost. The Dominion had lost. And humanity had won without even trying. The transmission ended with a final sentence, spoken with casual confidence. The Dominion is finished. And now, the galaxy belongs to us. The screen went black. The war chamber fell silent. And the last ruler of the Dominion finally understood. They had never stood a chance. The Dominion was dead. Its fleets were gone, its armies shattered, its rulers either executed by their own people or fleeing into the cold darkness of space. Once, their empire had stretched across the stars, a symbol of dominance that had crushed countless civilizations beneath its heel. Now, it was nothing but a graveyard of burning worlds and abandoned warships. And at the center of it all, the ones who had done the impossible, the species that had reduced the greatest power in the galaxy to ruins, were not celebrating with solemn pride. No. They were laughing. Humanity had never taken the war seriously, not in the way the Dominion had expected. When the Dominion had declared war, they had expected terror. Instead, the humans had greeted the threat with amusement. When the first Dominion fleets arrived, humanity hadn't begged for mercy. They had mocked their attackers, turning battle reports into entertainment. The destruction of the Dominion had been broadcasted like a galactic reality show, with human pilots grinning at the cameras, laughing as they toyed with their enemies. Their strategy had been terrifying in its simplicity. Break the Dominion, not with brute force, but with humiliation. The war had never been about survival for humanity. It had been a game. And now that the game was over, humanity had won. Deep in the ruins of the Dominion's last remaining stronghold, he had lost everything. His empire, his fleets, his legacy, all of it had been ripped away by a species that had never even considered him a real threat. His hands trembled as he stared at the screen in front of him. Across every Dominion world, human broadcasts played endlessly. Images of Dominion warlords groveling for their lives, of once mighty battleships being torn apart like toys, of civilians celebrating their freedom. Every moment of the war had been recorded, edited, and replayed across the galaxy. The Dominion's downfall had become the greatest comedy in human history. And then the final message came. A transmission, broadcasted across the last remnants of the Dominion's leadership. Vorthak's screen flickered, and then, there they were, the humans. A group of them sat around a table, smiling casually, as if they weren't addressing the last surviving rulers of a fallen empire. One of them, a woman with sharp eyes and a smirk that sent a chill down Vorthak's spine, leaned forward. Well, she said, that was fun. The room around Vorthak was silent. His remaining generals, his most loyal officers, stood frozen, too terrified to speak. The woman on the screen chuckled, shaking her head. I have to say, we weren't expecting this to be so easy. We thought you'd at least put up a real fight, she sighed dramatically. But I guess we overestimated you. Vorthak's claws dug into his armrest. He wanted to scream, to lash out, to deny everything, but the truth was inescapable. They had lost. And the humans were enjoying every second of it. The woman leaned back, resting her feet casually on the table. You know, we were thinking of wiping you all out, she continued. Total extermination. Just to be safe. She tilted her head, as if considering it. But honestly, that would be boring. She grinned. And we don't like being bored. Vorthak felt a deep, sinking dread in his chest. This was worse than death. The humans had no intention of finishing them off quickly. They wanted the Dominion to live with this humiliation. They wanted every surviving Dominion officer, every citizen, every former ruler to wake up every single day knowing that humanity had destroyed them and laughed while doing it. The screen changed, showing a montage of Dominion defeats. A Dominion general tripping over himself as he tried to flee. A warlord crying as he surrendered. A mighty Dominion dreadnought exploding into pieces while human pilots cheered. It wasn't just history. It was a joke. The greatest empire in the galaxy had become nothing more than a meme. The woman on the screen smirked. You see, we don't need to kill you. We've already done something worse. She gestured at the screen. This will live forever. Every species in the galaxy will remember this moment. Every time they hear the name Dominion, they won't feel fear. They'll feel pity. Or worse, they'll laugh. She chuckled. That's your legacy now. You're not conquerors anymore. You're not warriors. You're not even villains. She leaned forward, her grin widening. You're a joke. Vorthak couldn't breathe. The Dominion had ruled for centuries, had inspired fear in the hearts of millions. Now, all of that was gone. The galaxy didn't fear them anymore. The galaxy was laughing at them. The woman on the screen gave a mock salute. Anyway, thanks for playing. We had a blast. She winked. Maybe next time, don't start a war you can't win. The screen cut to black. The war was over. But the humiliation would last forever.